Hey, this is Tim Ives, Director of Photography of Stranger Things and HBO's Girls, and you're listening to me on The Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions, and this is The Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production, filmmaking, television, and music industries. Tim Ives is the visionary cinematographer behind this summer's massive hit show, Stranger Things, and we discuss all the lighting and lensing techniques that give Stranger Things its retro iconic look. The Go Creative Show is supported by our friends at Kessler, making innovative tools for filmmakers. Visit them at KesslerCrane.com. Rule Boston Camera, buy, rent, create at Rule.com. Newshooter.com, essential news for real-world shooters. Shutterstock.com. Hedge for Mac, the fastest way to back up media. And PremiumBeat.com. Premium, royalty-free music and sound. So this is definitely the summer of Stranger Things, right? Let's be honest. That's all anybody is talking about. It's everywhere. And Tim is not only a fantastic guest, but he also, you may not know this, he shot the pilot for Mr. Robot, which is another show I love. And he's been shooting the show HBO's Girls since season 2. He's a great guest, and you guys are going to love it, and it's coming up in just a couple of minutes. But before we get there, I want to talk about Rule Boston Camera. Rule Boston Camera is the place to go to purchase and rent all of your production equipment. But what I think is the most important thing that they do is their learning section. Okay, so you go to their website, rule.com, R-U-L-E.com, click on Learn, and you have access to all of their events that you can learn from. Okay, so they do events on everything, cameras and lighting and audio and all of this stuff. The events are free, the videos are free, and I can't urge you enough. It's the best place to go and learn about this stuff. 2 coming up in September. Wednesday, September 14th, Run and Gun with the Sony PXW Z150. That's at 10 a.m. and it's free. And then Thursday, September 22nd, an introduction to the new VariCam LT. That's going to be a big one. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Again, it's free. And if you can't make it to the events, don't worry, because you have access to everything, all of their previous events, on their Vimeo page. Just head over to rule.com, R-U-L-E.com, and check it out. You're going to love these guys, especially what they offer for free. It's insane. And lastly, Hedge for Mac. Hedge is the fastest app for importing and backing up media and OS X. Okay? It has a simple interface, but it's very, very powerful, and it's built for video, photo, and audio in mind because it's optimized for files larger than 100 megabytes and more. So 100 megabytes or larger is what it's all about, and that's what we're all about in the production industry, right? It's faster than the Finder, and you can import multiple sources to multiple destinations. So that all of that craziness is super important, but the most important is that it's reliable and it's fast. And that's what it is. Because when you're backing up this media, you want to make sure it's reliable because once it's gone, it's gone. So you can get a free version of Hedge for Mac on their website, and I strongly encourage you to do that and check it out. But it's so good that I don't even think you need the free version. Just go right to the paid version. It's $99 and it's the best $99 you're ever going to spend for the peace of mind you'll get knowing that your footage is being backed up and backed up and verified. $99 is nothing, but I can get you 20% off of that to make it an even more delicious deal. And the way to get it is go to hedgeformac, HEDGEFORMAC.com/Go Creative Show, and you'll get a 20% discount off the price. Hedgeformac.com/Go Creative Show. Go there, get the app. You're going to love it. It's as simple as that. All right, it's time for our spotlight today. Tim Ives. The Netflix hit show Stranger Things is clearly the breakout hit of the summer with its brilliantly told story, impeccable acting, and masterful directing. But it's the 80s-inspired iconic look of Stranger Things that has the world begging for more. And we have the cinematographer, Tim Ives, on the show today to talk all about it. So I'm here with Tim Ives, cinematographer for this summer's breakout hit, Stranger Things. And I have to say right up front, I haven't seen the whole series purposely because I have 2 episodes left. I don't want to know it all when I do these interviews because I don't want to be tempted to ruin things for people. So I kind of hold back a little bit. It's as hard as it was to hold back. I've held back a little bit because I didn't want to conduct this interview having seen everything. and risk giving things away for people. So with that in mind, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things as well, but I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
My pleasure. Good morning.
So where are you? Are you in New York? I know you were West Coast for a while, but are you back in New York?
Yeah, no, we live in New York. My family and I we live in Gowanus, Brooklyn. Right now, I'm out in Fire Island. We have a little beach shack out here, and so it's the weekend. So that's where you're catching me.
Nice. And you're from East Coast, right?
Yeah, I guess mostly East Coast. My father lives in Florida, but when my parents divorced when I was a little kid, we moved up to Vermont, and that's where I was primarily raised, in southern Vermont.
And then you went out west for work, or like where did that transition come from?
Well, okay, so I made my way to New York to become a production assistant, and I was a PA in New York on television commercials. I guess late '80s. Yeah, later '80s. Then when I needed to, I realized that it was time for me to really make the jump and try to become a cinematographer or a camera assistant. I moved to L.A. in search of glory and wound up hooking up with a couple of music video production companies and shooting for their new directors. I had a Bolex, and we were off and running. I was over working at Oil Factory for Billy Poveda and one of his directors at the time, Frank Sacramento, and we had a lot of fun shooting out there. So it was a really fun time. Early '90s, very creative for music videos, and nobody was really like telling us what to do.
That really was like the golden age of videos, I think. It could partially be because that's kind of when I was growing up, but I don't know, it just seemed like the 80s when they started, obviously, was a golden age because it was brand new, but it seems like late 80s, early 90s is when like everybody started getting it right. They started really embracing the art form of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, you had one of my favorite directors from that time was Matt Maheron, who he did like Tracy Chapman, Fast Cars, did Metallica. I think it was Enter Sandman. I'm not sure. His work was just really spoke to me, especially a video he did for Peter Gabriel called Mercy Street. Just absolutely beautiful. And it really, it opened up my eyes to the fact that you don't have to be cookie cutter in order to make it. You can be really creative, and you can just follow your own instincts. That's certainly what Matt did, and it gave me incentive to do the same.
Did you go out there, out to LA for short form commercial music videos, or did you always kind of have long form in your mind?
Well, I think at the time I had long form in my mind, but I felt like it was more accessible at the time for me to really, just because I'd been working on television commercials, and that was my start into production. It was more accessible for me to really concentrate on the music video approach, and I'm just a music fan. I think is probably what I would describe myself as first and foremost. Doing music videos and blending that with images seemed like a natural thing for me. But so that was really, and that was also non-union at the time, so it was easy to do that and without having to go through all sorts of loops.
Are you a musician as well, or just a fan?
I'm a fan. I can play the spoons and the bongos.
So you are a musician, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm a very, very talented musician, actually. Yeah.
There's a lot of parallel. There's so many musicians in the filmmaking production field. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there are. Well, it runs. The music industry sort of runs as a current through our family. My wife was a music video producer, and we have lots of friends still in the music business, and so I'm constantly being able to hear things before some other people, before it comes out to the mainstream, and I love that. It's great.
Well, on your website, timives.com, TIMIVES.com, you've got samples to a lot of your work. I obviously we're going to talk about Stranger Things, but I kind of want to start with photography because your photography work is really, really beautiful.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much.
It's one of those things where we can get so caught up in the show, and next thing you know, the hour's gone by. But I want to really start with photography because I think it's great, and I think it certainly informs the way that you shoot your work. And I'd love to know kind of where your inspiration came from. Like, where does this love for photography come from for you?
Well, my dad gave me a camera when I was probably like 6 years old. I think it was a Kodak X15, and when my parents split up, I carried that with me and got film once in a while. And I always, he was a really nice black and white photographer. I'm sure he still is. He's still alive. So that was the first time I had a camera. And when I was little, I remember being up in Vermont and just taking that camera and like sinking it in the grass and photographing bugs and things, and then doing it like in a little like kind of storyboard kind of way. There wasn't a lot to do. There was no internet. There was no TV. I mean, we had like one grainy black and white channel. That's where I got when I first started taking pictures. That's what I started doing. But that's not necessarily my inspiration for it. Like, well, I guess it is actually, because I wasn't aware of. I became aware later of the fashion photographers and National Geographic photographers that I love so much.
And do you continue to do that work today?
I don't think I was ever really a still photographer as far as making making a living out of it. I've always done it for myself. I still, of course, I have cameras. I'm a collector of cameras. I have my Leica M9, which I haven't pulled out in a while. I have my Pentax 6.7. I have my Nikon A10, and my most recent favorite thing is my Fuji X100T, which kind of takes it back. Probably looks most like that little X15 camera that I had when I was a kid. I know that I'm thinking about it, but I absolutely love taking pictures, and I have 3 kids, so following them around as well over the years has been something that I love. Maybe not so much for them, but I'm always inspired by my surroundings and my travels, and the camera just always goes with me no matter what.
Your commercial work is also fantastic. I mean, so many here. You have a few samples on your site, and even of these, they're ones that everyone has seen. I mean, the Geico Camel commercial.
Yeah,
there isn't a person in the world that hasn't seen that thing. In your AT&T work, and the Xbox replacer ad is hysterical. I mean, I love the commercial work, and I'm curious what the differences are for you, shooting commercials versus shooting TV shows. Like, what are some of the main differences? It may not even be the cinematography, but just the structure of the way that the project is, the logistics of it, how big the crews are, that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes in commercials, first of all, commercials are, you come in and you have 2 or 3 days. Sometimes you have longer to make this little 30-second thing. So it's more in and out. Whereas and it's also telling a story in 30 seconds, which is really fun too. But it's as far as having a story that can have an emotional impact in 30 seconds, that's not often you get to really do that, where it really hits you. But certainly there are commercials and really talented people that are making those commercials that are having success with that. But the long form thing is something I always wanted to go for when I felt I was right for it. And I think it was about 10 years ago or so when I started doing TV pilots, just to sort of build up a resume that would make my work attractive to feature and television directors and producers. But I think you can remember. I think it was around the time of the crash when all of a sudden those little $15 million independents started going away, and they actually were replaced by premium like pay channel HBO and eventually Netflix and Showtime. They started making quality programming, and I was very fortunate to wind up in that at the time. With HBO doing, I think my first one was How to Make It in America. But I had done some pilots. I did a pilot called Kingpin with Alan Coulter, who is an excellent director and a longtime friend. He's he's mostly known for Sopranos and he's Hollywoodland was one of his films, but I worked on House of Cards with him. He brought me in on season 1 of that, which I'd already been doing Girls at that point. But it just took a little work to get into the longer form narrative, because as far as productions go, they don't really translate. It's hard to get the work unless you've been doing the work, and they're very different, even between commercials, music videos, and longer length stuff.
When you do a pilot, and this may be a stupid question, but I have no idea. When you're doing a pilot, is there the assumption that you're definitely not shooting the series? Or,
no, not at all.
So there's a potential for you to shoot. Like, how does that happen? How does it translate? How does it transition from the pilot to the series from a cinematographer's standpoint?
Okay, well, I mean, the 2 successful pilots I've done, which I did not wind up doing the series for, are Blue Bloods for CBS and Mr. Robot for USA. Mr. Robot's the most recent one. I did the Mr. Robot pilot in the off season of Girls, and have had a long relationship now with Lena and Jenny Connor and Eileen Landris over there, and I definitely it's been such a wonderful experience that even though something as tempting as Mr. Robot, which is a wonderful show, I still wanted to stick with my girls, so to speak. I just wanted to honor that, and I'm happy for the success of the show, and I'm friends with the DP on that as well, and it's all good. It's just nice to see everybody.
So I see. So you shot it. You had the opportunity to stick with it, but because of your prior obligation with girl. Okay.
Sam had asked me to come shoot the show, and it was a really hard thing saying no, because I really felt the show was going to be big, and I'd already, Lena had already asked me to come back, and I told her yes. So that was the case there.
So when you do take Mr. Robot, for instance, you did the pilot, you've made the decision to hand it off.
Yep.
What are your responsibilities at that point when you do make the handoff?
Really none. It's just it's for the people at hand to continue the look of the show, and it's in their, of course, best interest, because the pilot episode is the pilot episode, and it looks like that, and you can't jump to a completely different style for the next few episodes or so. I guess you can sort of change it over a while, but the look of Mr. Robot was pretty cool. Sam Esmail, our writer and creator of the show, had a strong feeling about that, and the look and what he wanted. And Niels Arden Oplev, I believe, was the director. I know. And we all set a very strong look on that. And Todd came in, and I spoke with him afterwards. The next DP, Todd Campbell. And met him down in Austin at South by Southwest, and we struck up a friendship, and spoke briefly. But he and Sam, bonded, and they got it right.
Do you feel good about where the show has gone visually?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think that's another show where I'm like halfway through the first season. I love it, and I think it's the use of negative space is unbelievable, and it's so dark, and it's just very cool. I like that show a lot. So it's interesting to see your name on the pilot. Yeah,
it was a cool thing, because at the time USA they had a sort of a look that they were known for, and they wanted to change that up. And I wasn't sure they were going to allow us to do it, but yeah, they absolutely did. And I think that they're pretty happy about it.
So let's get into Stranger Things. I mean, first of all, the show is great, and everybody knows it. Everyone's talking about it. It truly is. It's like, this is the summer of two things: Pokemon Go and Stranger Things. It's a bizarre world. And both had this really organic, kind of word of mouth thing that just exploded. When did you realize that this was going to be the thing of the summer? That there must have been a breaking point for you.
I'm still sort of realizing it. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. We all, I'm sitting about 5 feet where I read the first outline package of the show that the Duffer sent me last summer, around just a little bit before this time. And I read it, and I was like, this is so good. I'm never getting this. There's no way I'm getting this. This is
really?
So good. This is so good. And it was originally titled Montauk, so it was going to shoot fairly close to home. And then it switched to Hawkins, Indiana, and was moved to Atlanta, Georgia. So it was a difficult thing for me to commit to being away for a long time. But I knew back then that the show, I really felt it was going to be special and great. As far as the reception has gone, I wasn't really thinking about that as much as I was thinking about how much I'm going to like this show, and how personal it is. The reception it's getting and continues to get now is, frankly, just completely overwhelming.
It's incredible, and certainly online, the online world has embraced it in every aspect. I mean, there's things I read about the opening credits, and now there's soundtracks on iTunes, and it's just people are obsessed with everything from the acting to the look of it to the music of it. I mean, I can't even remember the last time a show came around, or even a movie for that matter, where people enjoyed all aspects of it.
I think the Duffers put together a group of people, and I think, I'm sorry, I don't have the name of the guys that did the music. I know the band is Survivor. I think, is that right, or my Survival? I'm sorry, I'll get it for you in a second. But they had those guys. I think were booked first. They knew they wanted this John Carpenter-esque sort of soundtrack to it, and they discussed that with me in my initial interview. But I think the Duffers brought together and inspired a group of people, including myself and our art director and property people, wardrobe, hair, casting. They got everybody inspired to give 110 or more, as much percentage as everybody had to do their very, very best work. And we were all super inspired, and we were all on the same page, and we all did it for the love of the show. And the kids were inspirational. They were super great and super committed. And I just felt like it was going to be, it was going to be really great. I kept telling Matt reminded me the other day that I kept telling him all along, this is going to be really big. It's going to be really great. But it certainly has surpassed my expectations as far as how it's been received.
How did you get involved with the show? You said a year ago you're sitting there reading the script. How did that reading of the script turn into you being hired to do the show?
Well, the usual thing. It's I think Jason Pagney, my agent at WME, sent it over to me, saying there's some buzz about this. They're young directors, but they're and I've worked with young directors on Girls, and they sent it over to me, and I read it, and I just was a page turner, much like the show is, like a binge worthy, go to the next episode thing. And this was just an outline, but it was so lovingly done. The artwork in the outline was so lovingly done and so retro looking. It appealed to me immediately. I mean, I came up, I grew up with these movies that that people are all referencing, the look of too. And, my favorite cinematographers from back in the day were even, Alan Davio and, I have a whole list of people I could recommend, I could talk about, Nestor Almendros, but I'm going off point, I suppose. But
well, and just for the record, just to kind of patch up what we mentioned before, the band is Survive, Survive. I'm looking at a thing in here right now. So if you guys want to check that out, you certainly can. There's, it'll be easy as pie to find out about the theme for Stranger Things. Just type it in, you'll find it. Those
two guys are remarkable, and I think that they grab you from the opening credits. I mean, the music, like you said, and the title sequence with the pulsing red of Stranger Things. It's just remarkable, and it harkens back to a time. So many people comment to me about it that it takes them back. They feel like they're kids again watching this show, and I think that's a really amazing thing for people to experience. Well, you have to watch the opening credits. No one's fast forwarding that. You just watch it because it's great. It makes you want to see it. The show starts off though with a kind of cold opening, and then about 4 or 5 minutes in, it pops to the credits, I believe. Yeah. And it's just so fun, and that the score. I mean, I have both. There's 2 editions out now of the score. I bought them both on iTunes, and it's just remarkable what those 2 guys did for the music. Really incredible. I think Apple Music, maybe it's Spotify, it's one or the other, but somebody put together a playlist of songs inspired by Stranger Things, and it's all that type of that kind of synth 80s inspired synth music. Really cool stuff. I got to check that out. Yeah, it's great, like driving music. So if you're driving it, I don't know, it's like perfect Boston to New York or back driving music, and I'm often doing that ride. So it's like the perfect score for that at night. I've been needing to get to Boston anyway, so maybe I'll do that. There you go. There you go. So obviously the visually there's influences from late 70s, early 80s movies. Sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, was that something that was, talked about ahead of time? Like, these are the movies we're thinking about. And if so, did you sort of rewatch things and refamiliarize yourself with the look of these films? 100%. The first one I looked at literally before I even had the show. I sat here with my family and my kids, especially my kids. We watched E.T., and my kids had seen it a while ago, and I hadn't seen it in a while, but we sat here in our living room and we watched E.T., and we all cried at the end, and we all had the same emotions that I had in 1980, whatever it is, when it came out. I think it was like 82 or something. And we all watched it, and man, it held up, and there was a restraint in the work and the cinematography and the lighting that I've always been attracted to. Hold on a second, lost my train of thought. Sure. Well, I actually would like to pick up there. You mentioned restraint in the cinematography. What do you mean by that? Well, I mean by just not showing off too much as far as what you can do technically. I mean, sometimes in music videos we used to do that just because they're quick little things, they need to be flashy. But I like to sort of light very naturally and not in a way that people are really saying at the moment that especially looks like something, or they start talking about the lighting while they're watching the show.
Yeah.
I'm really happy and proud of the way the show looks, but I think that there's a naturalness to it that doesn't take you out of the story at any point. That's what I mean by restraint. I don't want the viewer to be like, that looks like, I don't want them to be starting talking about technical issues while they're watching the show. They should be only paying attention to the actors and the storyline.
Yep. So in watching these films and planning, your strategy for cameras, lighting, lenses, all of that, what did you end up, I guess, what were your camera tests for this? Because that's pretty important. It's basically a period piece. It needs to feel like an 80s movie, but it has to be modern enough that it holds up today. What did you test for cameras?
Well, Netflix is a 4K platform. They only accept 4K for their shows. So there were a few options to look at. We looked at Panasonic, we looked at Sony, and we looked at the Red camera, and eventually went with the Red. I've shot with the Red. I did shot with it initially on House of Cards season 1 when I came in just to finish Eigel Brild's amazing work on the last 2 episodes. And I was smitten by it, and I talked to David Fincher. When the camera first came out, it had some issues, but now it's a very stable camera. And I talked with David about it, who he's obviously a huge Red lover and user and fan of. And I really liked the way the camera. It felt like a old Kodak film stock to me. Like I always think it feels like 5293, which is a really soft, lovely film stock. And so I tested that camera. It was, it's something I've used and been familiar with, and we tested all the cameras, but I was pretty sure that was going to win. And the Duffers liked the way it looked. We tested it with a variety of lenses, and I wound up going with the Leicas, which are flatter than today's kind of popular contrastier lenses, and a little rounder. So they were a little soft on skin, and they reminded me of some of the early Panavision stuff from 30 years ago or so, and the combination of the two, I think, really, really worked. And even further than that, the brothers wanted to add a very slight grain to the show, and they did. We tested a bunch of film stocks as well. There, you can now put grain actually into the telecine, and it can interject actual film stocks to put layer on top of your image. And I think we went with a 5298 film stock that we liked an awful lot, that had a very slight grain. You almost can't tell. I imagine you might even see it better when the Blu-rays come out, but it helped to sort of, again, give it that sort of nostalgic film look.
It may be one of those things you feel more than you see for most people. Like you said, it might be hard to tell that grain, but I think it might. Yeah, overall. A listener question came in that I think was really good. Stuart Dennis on our Twitter wanted me to ask you, did the sometimes clinical sharpness of the Red present an aesthetic obstacle for the show set in the 80s? And if so, how did you deal with it? Did you find that at all?
No, not at all. I think, with that camera, you have to shoot it at an f-stop that's pretty wide open, and that softens it. So we would shoot with the lenses around a 2.5 to 2.8. Tried never really to get above a 2.8, which is where you get more background in focus. Sort of decreases the depth of field by shooting wider open. And that really softened the image up and gave good, I think they call it bokeh, B-O-K-E-H.
Yeah.
In order to keep it filmic, and in combination with those Leica lenses as well, it really, I think we succeeded.
Are those the Summicron lenses?
I think so. Yeah. The wider open ones. Yeah.
I like those. We actually just recently used those and paired them with Sony FS7 and Sony A7S as a B cam, and
that's cool.
Yeah, they worked really, really well. We were doing a piece for a university, some marketing stuff for them, and it looked really nice, but we, of course, had tons of depth of field. We were shooting at gyms and all sorts of stuff. So
yeah,
it was really nice. But I like those lenses a lot.
They're really pretty. They're a little warmer than the Master Primes and the Cooks. But with the Red camera, you have really good control of color balance in camera, which we did a lot. I would say most of the look you see is done in camera on the Stranger Things.
Did you have a particular, couple of focal lengths that you liked for the most part? Did you stick within, a range of focal lengths for the show?
Yeah. One thing I did was not get a 50 millimeter, which just to sort of
Why?
stay. I know, because I felt like it was neither here. It was in between the lenses that you really wanted. So I forced myself to shoot with, in the 40 and the 65 millimeter for close-ups. And I think that the Leica is a 75. I don't think it goes to 85. I could be wrong. I'm not currently using them on girls at the moment. But so we shot with 40 down to like a 28. I think our lenses, for a lot of the show were on the wider side, very cinematic. I think we didn't have anything really wider than a 21, but we often were in the 28, 32 range, and the 40 and 65s were our favorite as well. I think once you get past 75, things start looking a little telephoto, and you don't feel like you're with the actors anymore. But we would not use anything longer than like a 65 most of the time, I think.
Yeah.
That was a go-to lens for this.
And was that inspired by from the same, from the same sources as the look of the film?
Not for the wider lenses, yes. Not the close-up work, I don't think. I think the wider lenses, especially in films like E.T. and Jaws, where they have those big foreground close-ups on the wider lenses. I remember Roy Scheider with Hooper and everybody behind him on the boat. They had those sort of like wide-angle close-up feelings, and that could be done if you had the depth with the 40, but we would do it in the 32 at times as well. So those, we really responded to Spielberg's, especially his earlier work, as far as those lenses go.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Home Organ by Zach Nikita. PremiumBeat.com is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. Head over to PremiumBeat.com and get access to their thousands of songs for as low as $49 each. The best part is, for most of these songs, you don't even just get the song, right? You get a 30, you get a 15, you get a 60, you get these beautiful cut downs. You also get loop packages, which is great. So you can arrange the song how you see fit for your particular project. And that's just one of the many reasons why I love PremiumBeat.com, and I am always going there for my royalty-free music. And of course, as always, I'll put a link to this song in the show notes at gocreativeshow.com, so check it out. I know you'll love it. All right, let's take a minute and talk about Kessler. Finding the perfect second shooter for your projects can be difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. Until now, introducing the Kessler Second Shooter, a revolutionary motion control system that boasts a sleek and compact design, feature-rich operation, and an incredibly intuitive user interface, featuring 100% repeatable motion control for live mode, looping, time-lapse, and stop-motion applications. Visit KesslerCrane.com today to learn more. Now, at this point, the second shooter's been out for a while, so I don't know why I continuously introduce it to you, but here's the thing. Kessler stuff is awesome. I use it on my sets all the time. I can't even think of the last time I was on a set that didn't have Kessler equipment. So I love it. It's super reliable. The build quality is fantastic. And I mean, let's face it, it's not just about sliders anymore. They have so many great things. And you really should check it out. KesslerCrane.com. If you haven't gone there in a while, you'll be surprised at all the cool stuff that they have. KesslerCrane.com. And lastly, Shutterstock. So everybody knows that Shutterstock has photos and music and video. They got over 3 million royalty-free video clips. But I use Shutterstock in a different way sometimes. Sometimes you're editing and you get kind of that writer's block. You don't know what the hell to do. You're stuck in a rut. You got to get out of it. And I've used Shutterstock.com as an inspiration sometimes to just help me kind of think about a new way to piece pieces together, piece clips together. Now, I go to the site, I look around, and they've got some really good collections there. And that's mostly what I use when I'm, looking for this inspiration. Particularly the Director's Choice collections, which I love. they're in all different categories: aerials, urban time lapse, all sorts of stuff. And they even have this great collection called Director's Cuts, which are shots inspired by famous directors. And I just think they look great. Now, they have over 3 million clips, so there's a lot of stuff there. But the most important is that it's quality stuff. Because when you put a piece of stock footage into your own video, you want it to be as good, if not better. And that's what you're going to find at Shutterstock.com. And for all you 4K enthusiasts, they have a ton of 4K footage that's really beautifully shot. So I can't suggest it more. Go to Shutterstock.com and check it out. I know you'll love what you find, even if you're not buying anything. Just use it as a way to get inspired. Shutterstock.com. All right, we're going to move on to our second portion of our interview with the great Tim Ives from one of my favorite shows this summer for sure, the great Netflix hit, Stranger Things. I'd like to talk about lighting. What was your main strategy for lighting this show?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it always changes on shows. I don't feel like I have one set strategy for me as a cinematographer, but I feel like like I said, we looked at films like E.T. and I looked at Avalon. I mean, a lot of Davio's work, and I always liked his softness and his realism, but it also had a little bit of a heightenedness to it. So, where I could, we would technically I would do book lights a lot, which is where you would bounce a light, and then the light that's being bounced would before it got to the subject, you'd have another layer of diffusion in front of it, and we'd use that with crates so it didn't spill over the walls a lot. But I tried to isolate as much as I could the actor off the background when we could. For interiors, I mean, for exteriors, it's something that I sort of fell in love with and accepted, which I wouldn't have thought I would be sometimes front lighting, which can be very flat. But I looked at William Eggleston's photographs from the 70s and early 80s, and he has a lot of that kind of stuff with minimal depth of field, and it had a feeling of nostalgia to those photographs that I thought would translate well, especially like the school exteriors and any wides, and I'm really psyched about it. It's not necessarily something I'm drawn to. Certainly, I don't think many cinematographers would say, "Oh yeah, put the light behind the camera." But usually, you want the backlight. But it did work at times for this, and I tried to, I definitely looked at Eggleston. He was a big influence for me for that exterior daylighting.
One thing I noticed is that throughout the series, as Joyce's character becomes more and more unhinged, so her house gets darker and darker. And, wondering if that, what you had done for that house is something you did in other parts as well. As the characters changed, so does their lighting.
Well, I think it was written into it. I mean, there was a lot in the buyer's house that we wound off going off practicals, and certainly the Christmas lights that you see in 3 and 4 were a big motivation for it. And I think towards the end, the month. Well, I don't want to give anything away here, but
yeah,
gotta be careful about that. But the a lot of practical lighting with the Christmas lights has an effect, and it is a blend of horror and it's like a family horror film. But we did have to embrace darkness because it's a little scarier than brighter light. But also the monster, we didn't want to light up too much. We had a practical monster, a guy in a suit who was with us, and it was amazing. And when you see him in the buyer's house, if you see him in the buyer's house, yeah.
See, that's what I mean. It's impossible to not give things away. That's why I try not to see to the end. But that's okay. I'm assuming everybody listening has seen the whole thing, so.
I hope so. I'm sorry if I try not to give anything away.
Oh, screw them. Who cares?
It's your podcast, not mine.
I know, exactly. I want to talk about practical effects because, I mean, you think a piece like this, going back to the 80s, you want to be as realistic as possible. Was there some thought into how do we make as much of the special effects practical because we're trying to kind of have this 80s feel?
100%. And we all responded to, films like Alien and Jaws, where you didn't see the monster or the shark that clearly in the beginning, and it's only in the very end when you maybe get a chance to see it in all its glory. And hiding it, I think we did it with lighting as well, keeping it shadowy and backlit. Our monster. Definitely helped to give a sense of mystery about it. Like you're like, what is it? What does it really look like? I can't quite make it out.
Yeah.
And that's scarier than if we had shown the monster in episode one and straight out. The brothers knew this and as well, so it was all part of it. We didn't want to give it away until we really needed to.
I'm curious about the parallel world, the underneath. What are they calling it? I want to say underneath, and it's wrong all the time. The upside down.
People are calling it the upside down. Our working title for it was called the Nether, and I think that I think it's still referred to that, but I think the fans call it the upside down. I'm not sure.
That world.
It's called the upside down. Sorry.
The upside down. Yeah, I think they refer to it as the upside down in the show. The three kids or the four kids.
My wife is saying you're 100% right.
Oh, good. So I like her. But the artifacts, the floating artifacts in there, were those practical? Were those just added in later? Like, how did you get them to look and feel so real? Yeah, go ahead.
Both. It was a flocking that VFX came up with on set, and we tested when we. I feel like I don't want to even mention the scene we tested it in, but we did test it.
I'll just do it. It's fine.
All right. Well, a pool scene with a I can't do it. I just can't bring myself to saying it out loud. Like I don't want to give anything away to anybody about this thing. I'm so worried about it. But we tested a look for the Nether, that bluish look, and then we tested some flocking with it with top E lighting and backlight, and it came out really, really well. There were times when we couldn't quite get it to work, fill a larger space, and sometimes we were in really confined areas that they needed to add layers to it in post, but they did it seamlessly. I think they did it seamlessly. I think you'd probably agree. Throughout, it looks really, really good. But that was the brothers' vision, to have that sort of like flocking and keep it really simple and not try to do anything too tricky and for the look of that supernatural world.
It's a really interesting approach because, like you said, I mean, it's lit differently, than the real world, but not that much different. And just that little added effect of having those floaters, you're somewhere else, and it's so simple but so effective. I thought it was a really great choice. Yeah,
it was cool. It was it was a great decision on their part to do that, and we just tested it and got it to a technical point that they loved, and it was good. It took a little while to figure out what this Nether was going to be, and I'm really, really happy with it.
What was it like working with kids? Had you done that before?
Well, I must have worked with. I have 3 kids myself, and recently I haven't done a lot of work with kids. But this has been the biggest show I have done with kids, and it was awesome. A lot of them were theater actors and singers, and they all came, like I said before, with 100% of their game and wanting to make a great show. And their families came, and so we all became like I'd say we definitely became a family. I can't wait. Should we get picked up for a second season? I can't wait to.
Should you? If that thing doesn't get picked up for a second season, that'll be the most ridiculous thing of all time.
Stranger things have happened.
Oh, but, there we go.
We'll see. The kids are all on Fallon this week. Jimmy Fallon on Friday. I can't wait to see them. So maybe they'll have some news for us.
Well, and this question you may not have an answer to, but the show's about friendship, ideally, between these kids. I mean, that's what the show's about. And Girls is about friendship as well. And I'd like to see if there's a parallel between the way you shot these kids based on your experience shooting for Girls.
No, there is not. No, I'm just joking. I don't think so. I think you have 2 different things. You have fractured like friendships that are like almost toxic in Girls, and then you have the friendships in Stranger Things that are really, really strong. Your first deep friendships when you were that age are super strong, and every day, everything you do is a monumental decision at that age. And I think I was just taken by the idea that this is really like the sort of story where the adults are kind of peripheral, except for Joyce and Hopper, really, and it's really a kid story. And the kids, you can totally get behind kids, like with adults not being behind them, needing to go find their pal, needing to do what they think is right, and even when the adults don't believe them, they have to convince them that so this is a real thing. And I think that the way I photograph girls is more straightforward, but the camera movement in Stranger Things is its own thing. The camera moves consistently, but not just to move. It's got a sense of purpose to bring us into a character's mind, or to move away from a character. It definitely, by the end of the season, season one, we had it really. I think we had it pretty down as far as the movement goes. And girls, we move occasionally, but usually we're just sort of tracking with it, and we're more a little more objective, I think.
Is there a particular scene or shot that was, challenging for you?
Yes,
in Stranger Things.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Really, the opening scene in Stranger Things is one of my favorite shots, where we introduce the character of Hopper, where we do more than a 180. It's like a 270 move inside that trailer, coming off a picture of his daughter had made. It was on the refrigerator, and going through beer cans and seeing a TV, and then coming around, booming down and winding up right on him as he's passed out on the couch with beer cans. It was all done. Chappie, who's our dolly grip. We affectionately call him Chappie. He did such an amazing job on that shot. That camera, actually, the dolly goes forward and then backs up and turns around, and you feel like that camera is just panning through effortlessly through that little scene, that little room. It's probably my favorite shot of the season. There's one coming up that you haven't seen yet that is also technically one of my favorites too, but I don't want to give that away to you.
That dolly shot, it's right after the opening credits in the first episode.
Yeah,
I love those sorts of those big reveal shots, like I call them like the townspeople shot, like the big shot that says, okay, now this is the world that we live in, and it's wide.
To everything about that character before you even see him.
It's fantastic. And, that harkens back to those 80s Spielberg movies in particular. He loved doing stuff like that. And that, to me, is one of those things that really parallels your 80s sort of nostalgia feel with this new piece. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. We definitely didn't want to do an 80s piece that felt like, just a sort of copycat thing of the 80s. We really wanted just to inhabit the style and really, really everything that was good about filmmaking in that time. So.
I think the most amazing thing about it is that it never, I don't even know how to say this, but it's period, it's 80s. But the 80s is a time period that people make fun of quite a bit. And I think it's risky because you can very easily just kind of laugh at the old styles and forget that you're watching a show. And it just becomes like, oh, remember how horrible our haircuts were? And remember how bad the color palettes were? But this doesn't do that. It very much, it's drawing you into the story. It's a little self-aware, but it doesn't ever distract you from the story. And I think that's hard to do, particularly in the 80s. I just feel like 80s pieces up to this point were more comedy, and or 80s nostalgia pieces were more comedy. This isn't, and it never pulls you out of the story. I think that's really great.
I think it's a tribute to, again, all departments and casting, down to the background extra that's 100 feet back, and the wardrobe that person's wearing, and the way the hair is styled. It's just remarkable. I really noticed it early on in the show when we were in the school in the hallways and the kids were all moving around there. I was like, this is unbelievable. It looks amazing. And it was just nailed by all the departments for sure. And especially, I would be reticent to not mention Chris Trujillo, our production designer, who is my best friend on the show, as are the Duffers, of course. But he did an amazing job helping us, bring that world to life.
In our last couple of minutes, I want to talk about Girls just for a few minutes.
Sure.
This is a show I've seen, episodes here and there. I haven't watched the whole series all the way through, but I wanted to talk to you about capturing New York as a cinematographer, because this has been done by so many people in so many ways, and I think it's challenging. And I'm curious what your inspiration was to create the New York that you have in Girls.
Well, I think the mantra when I joined the show on season 2 was from Lena especially is we don't put our characters in front of iconic images, postcard images. We shoot the grid of it. We shoot on the street. We don't necessarily go to it to make a love letter to New York, even though I think we probably did that just by the fact that we shot in neighborhoods that traditionally maybe you wouldn't go to.
Yeah.
So if there was a shot, and all of a sudden, I remember I think it was like season 3, there was a shot over Hannah, Lena Dunham, and the Empire State Building was in the back, and I was like, this looks like kind of a postcard thing here. Should we like pan over a little bit? And I remember her being like, yeah, absolutely. That was a mantra on Girls, and I think we did that on How to Make It in America a little bit before that as well. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's like, don't go for those obvious, commercial shots that I've definitely filmed a lot of too in my career being in New York.
And do you have a favorite, on the other end? Do you have a favorite film cinematographer, photographer that has captured New York in a way that you really feel is fantastic?
A lot of the Europeans shooting do a great job. I'm thinking like Last Exit to Brooklyn was something that I loved, and I love the grittiness of that. Thinking of New York, well, I mean, come on, Woody Allen. I mean, yeah. Huge inspiration for us on Girls. Manhattan, right there. I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest for our show, for Girls.
Well, your work is fantastic. Obviously, Stranger Things, huge hit, and there has to be a second season. That would just be silly if there isn't. And I encourage everybody to... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Crossing our fingers.
Oh, please. I don't think you need to cross them at this point. TimIves.com, TIMIVES.com. Tim, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Such a great guest, such a great show, and very, very excited to see where it goes.
It's my pleasure, Ben. Thanks for getting in touch with me. Thank you so much.
Well, there you go. All the ins and outs of how Stranger Things has really achieved that great 80s look. I love that show. And I can't wait to finish the last 2 episodes now. Now I can. Now I feel free. I think I'm going to go watch them right now. I want to thank Tim Ives for coming on the show, talking about all of his great work. And I want to thank Matt Russell for mixing, mastering, and making the show sound so good. You can find Matt Russell on his website at gainstructure.com, and on Twitter at gainstructure. And while you're on Twitter, follow us at Go Creative Show. Let us know what you think of the show. Send us guest suggestions and send us questions, because sometimes I'll put out who I'm interviewing, and people on Twitter can send in their questions. I did that today. I want to thank our sponsors: Hedge for Mac, Rule Boston Camera, Kessler Crane, News Shooter, Shutterstock, and Premium Beat. Without these people, the show wouldn't exist. So if you like the show, go and support those people. It's as simple as that. See you next week. Bye-bye.